Welcome to part 3 of the Killer Sites video on building a TagCloud using PHP and MySQL. I wanted to step back just a little bit and make sure I clarified a couple things in case they were confusing. First of all, I wanted to jump back to the index.php file and fill in a couple lines here that hopefully will make the connection to the database a little bit, or help you understand how we're using the connection to the database in our models object. So within this, we're going to go ahead and create the TagCloud object. So I'm going to call it TagCloud, and it's going to equal new TagCloud model. And I'm going to pass in the MySQL I variable that we created within the OpenDB.php file. So if you notice, the MySQL I variable now contains a MySQL I connection. So we're going to pass in that, and then immediately following that we're going to run two functions that we haven't created yet but we'll use in a minute. So I'm going to set a data variable. I'm going to call it TagList, and that's going to equal TagCloud get TagList, like so. And then the line below it is pretty similar. Instead of TagList, it's going to be TagCloud. And instead of get TagList, it's going to be get TagCloud. Okay, like so. So to explain how the connection to the database works, we start by including the database. Here we include a file that creates a connection to the database here. And then after we've loaded our model, we create this TagCloud object, which is what this is, and we pass in the MySQL I connection. And within this, it takes this connection and sets it to the MySQL variable that's inside this object. So it means that all the functions inside this object now has access to the MySQL I connection. So it can be a little bit tricky, but I tried to think of one way that hopefully I could simplify the process of having a database connection that could potentially be shared between multiple models. So obviously you need to experiment with this. There may be better ways to approach it when dealing with multiple models, but this is just the way I've approached it in this video. Okay, so let's get started working on our getTags function. So obviously, when the TagCloud model is constructed, we call the getTags function, and we want this function to access our database and grab 3 bits of information. So if I go here, we want it to grab the tag name, we want to grab the tag ID, and we also want to make sure that we grab the number of times this tag has been used. So let's get started on this function. First of all, we're going to set a couple variables. I'm going to set this tags, so this variable up here, and we're going to set that equal to an empty array, like so. And we're also going to set largest, it should be this, largest, and that's going to equal 0. And then the next step is to write the MySQL I query itself. That's going to be result equals this MySQL I. So we're referring to this variable, which contains our MySQL I connection. And then we're going to do query. And you're going to have to bear with me a little bit. This query is a bit complicated, and I'll do my best to explain it. So like I said, we want to grab 3 bits of information. We want to grab the tag ID, the tag name, and the number of times the tag has been used. So we're going to start out with a select. And to access these 3 bits, we actually need to access 2 different tables in our database. So we need to make sure we specify which table, or which column we want to grab from which table. So post to tags. We want to grab the tag ID from the post to tags table. we want to grab the name column from the tags table, and finally we want to grab the count of the tag ID within the post to tags table. So that gets our 3 bits of information, and then we want to make sure we specify 2 things actually. First of all, we need to set this bit to a MySQL variable because we can't simply access this, and I'll hopefully explain that a little bit later. So I'm going to set that as total. So to be able to access this data, we're going to refer to it as total, like we would refer to tag ID or name. So that's that. And then we want to select this information from tags and post to tags. And then we want to make sure we select this where post to tags.tagID equals tags.id. We want to make sure we match up the tables properly. And then we want to prevent any duplication of data. So we're going to use a group by post to tags.tagID. Okay, so that should work fine. Let me go ahead and copy and paste it into phpMyAdmin and just make sure. And this is usually how I debug MySQL queries, just in case. So I copy and paste them into the SQL tab. Let's go. And it looks like we have one spelling mistake. Oopsie. Missed an S. There we go. Okay, so we've finished this query, and this is what we get. We get a list of the tags, the tag ID, and the number of times they've been used. So that's perfect. So I'm going to go back to Coda. And now let's actually do something with this data. So if result num rows is larger than 0, we're going to want to continue. Otherwise, let's set this tags variable to false. And this will indicate that there were no tags in our database, or potentially that our query has a problem. Okay, so now within this, we want to do a while loop, and we're going to loop through each of the results. So result, so while the row equals result fetch object, first thing we want to do is check to see if the row that we're accessing, which represents a specific tag, if that tag is used the most of all the tags. So we want to check for the largest. So if row total is larger than this largest, we want to set this largest. Okay, like so. So after this while loop finishes, what's going to be contained in our largest variable is the most number of times any tag has been used. So that's the first bit, and then let's go ahead and add the tag information to our array. So in that case, we do this tags, and we're going to create a new row in our tags array, and we're going to fill it with an array which has 3 pieces of information. As I said above, here it has an ID, a name, and a total. So ID is going to equal row tag ID. The name is going to equal row the name. And finally, the total is going to equal row total. Okay. And I should clarify, the reason why we needed to do as total here for this little bit of code is that we can't access this count. We can't do, for example, if I copy and paste, I can't access that information like so, because count is a MySQL specific function. So we need to assign it a specific variable, which then we access.